front of my
I'm
camera.
positive.
How about them Giants? How about them Giants? How about them Giants?
How about them Giants? Giants fans, how you doing this evening? We are sitting here and we are having our final episode of Draft Talk between just me and Truth. Next week, we will be live with the rest of the crew, and we're actually just going to go through the draft as a whole, mock situations like that. But tonight, we're not going over player by player like we have throughout the course of the past 4 months. Today, we're keeping it pretty simple, and we're just, now that we're about 10 days out, or not even, we're just discussing everything related to the options that are on the table for the Giants. And of course, we're going to discuss today's presser with Joe Schoen. Did he give any leeways? Probably not. But we're always trying to decipher where the Giants are sitting. And of course, at pick 3, it's not really clear who they're going to go with, especially because quarterback is still in the dialogue and in the mix. Truth, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good, Spartan. And like you said, we're only days away from the draft. And this has been such a crazy, 3 months into the draft. I mean, when you look on X and you see all the, I don't think anybody knows who they're taking.
Truth, I'm not exactly sure that the Giants know who they're taking.
I know.
The private workout at the end there with Shadur was a little bit surprising. Now, let's get right into what we want to start off with, and that is Joe Schoen's press conference today regarding the draft. He did bring up an interesting point about the private workout, that now it's not very uncommon to have private workouts after their pro day. Colorado did have a very late pro day, so It does kind of make sense that the Giants did a workout, and maybe it's not necessarily pertaining to a last-second scramble, but instead it's just pertaining to the calendar and timing in which they had because of how late Colorado's pro day was, and the fact that I guess there was an incident with 10 years ago where some player got hurt at a private workout before their pro day and the rest of the league was fed up. So that doesn't happen anymore. So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. My first thought was, are they still unsure what they want to do? Is that why they're going to go and look at him again? I mean, what else can he do, Sanders, to convince the Giants if he still needs to? If he's the guy at number 3, is he worthy of number 3? There's so many for me. Like I said, and like you said, I don't even know if they know who they're selecting. I mean, and we know it's boiled down to 3 players. That seems to be the consensus, right? Sanders, Hunter, and Carter.
Right.
And they all have kind of issues. Carter is a foot an issue. It doesn't appear to be, right? I've heard that there's no issue with the foot, but it's out there. You have Hunter with such an immense talent. What he did at the college level, can he do that again anywhere close to that in the NFL level? I have reservations on that, but some people don't. And apparently Shane today doesn't seem like he has reservations for it. So could he be the guy they're leaning to?
Yeah. And I think that's it with Shane. We hit on all the top prospects that are pretty obvious right now. I think in regards to his press conference, we want to talk about that first before we get into the prospects. I think what was interesting about his comments with Hunter was that, A, he didn't really seem quite sure of which side they'd want him to play just yet. And B, he actually brought up a very good point that I think a lot of us aren't considering, and it's not just about the challenges that Hunter will face playing both ways physically, but also the challenges that there are going to be with the fact that he has to know the offensive and defensive system.
Yeah.
That was a really good point. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. More complex when you get to NFL level. I think Shane was discussing that it's kind of simplified at the college level. He talked about basic schemes against a certain college team. So, but you get in the pro level, it's a little more complex, more than we all realize, unless someone's played the game or has been involved in that part of the NFL. So we don't really know.
Right, and we have seen there's players that have gone through the NFL where they struggle with even just knowing one side of the ball on offense and defense. The Giants have a player on the roster right now I'm not going to name that's struggling with that. But, and not to say that Hunter can't do that. I know he's a bright guy, but it is going to be tough. And knowing 99% of the playbook and not 100 is not acceptable. You have to know everything. You know, if you're out there on a play where you kind of forget what the assignment is, you know, it could really be exposed. So it's just something to consider there.
Yeah.
It take a lot of time, and especially for a rookie. You get drafted today, you know, the first game is in September. That's not a very long time to prepare to know both sides of the ball. So that is a complex issue with regards to Hunter. But again, if they feel like Hunter is just that all-around athlete who's going to be an unbelievable guy when he walks out on the field and he's just going to deliver, then I get it. You know, you got to go get him. But I think, you know, I just thought that was an interesting tidbit from the press conference. One other thing that I thought was interesting from the press conference, and this is where it gets a little bit challenging. He says that he has a process going back to Miami for the scouting and how they draft and how they approach the draft. You know, we never really did get clarity on what this process is, and that's what I'm very curious about.
Yeah.
What's this process? What is it that they do that might be a little bit different from other teams? And in some years, it obviously works, but you know, we've also had years where there's been disappointing drafts. And he's been with two organizations. He's been with Miami and he's been with Buffalo. And I'm not really sure Miami had great draft classes in the 2010s. I'm not really sure Buffalo had great ones towards the end there either. Obviously, they're a good team now. But I'm curious. It's mixed bag, but would like to see what they do and how they do it differently. Do you suspect anything that they do differently in your view?
You know, I'm in the dark like you are, Spartan. I don't know, like, what he meant by that as well. And I would like to get some kind of clarity on, you know, it doesn't give us all his little secrets, but it'd be nice to know, like, kind of how they, if they have like a step-by-step formula that they do with all their draft picks and all the process of the draft. It'd be pretty intriguing to watch that or to know it, but I don't know. I really don't.
I agree.
Yeah,
it's challenging. We saw on Hard Knocks last year their draft board. It was color coded. I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, obviously, you probably have to have something like that in place, but they were color coded. I think, you know, we didn't really quite get a sense, but you know, somebody could probably look at it and be like, all right, there's a red around each guy that had an injury, so that's probably what that bubble means. There's a yellow around, you know, this, perhaps, you know, two guys that both got arrested. Maybe it's a character concern. I think that's pretty interesting. But I feel like what's going to happen is, you know, especially beyond, you know, the third pick, because it's either going to be, I think it's just going to either be this truth, and you tell me what you're thinking. It's going to be either Hunter or Carter. Well, it's going to be either they go quarterback and they get Sanders because they like him, because they think he could be the franchise quarterback. Or if they don't feel like he can be the franchise quarterback, then they're going to go with Carter or Hunter, whoever is not picked by the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and again, we don't. I mean, I know the big talk right now is has been swinging towards Hunter going number 2, but you know, they say that the Giants still need a quarterback, but so does Cleveland. You know, if you look at who Cleveland, they got Flacco and they got Kenny. What's his name? Pickett, right? And we got Russell Wilson and Jameson Winston. I mean, I would rather have our quarterbacks than theirs. So they need a quarterback too.
But they still have Watson.
I know, but I don't think he's coming back. I don't think he's going to play this year. You think he's going to play?
I don't think so. So what? That bumps him down to injured reserve?
I guess they might put him on. That might put him on it could be the first until he's got 4 games, and then they may put him on a 60 after that. I don't know. I don't know what his status is. The last I heard, he's not going to be ready. But if I just think it, I really don't believe they're going to trade back. So for me, I'm taking that out of the equation. I don't think they're going to trade back from 3 and move back.
I couldn't imagine they do at this point.
Right. I think, you know, the 3 guys we keep talking about, Hunter, Carter, and Sanders, no particular order. I think there's one of those guys they like the most. They're not going to tell you who it is. And I mean, it could be Sanders for all I know. I mean, for me, they wouldn't be my choice. I'm a Carter guy. If he's healthy, he's my guy.
Right.
And some people want Hunter, which I get it. The guy is immensely talented, and some people want Sanders, and that's fine. I get it.
I mean, look, Truth, you've been a Giants fan for a long time. I feel like it's going to be really hard convincing Giants fans that the obvious choice there between an athlete like Hunter or Carter would be to get the edge. Somebody who can get the quarterback. Because if you think back at our 4 Super Bowls, that's what the teams are built off of. Now, of course, you got to say to yourself, all right, who's going to be the Hall of Fame player? And if you feel like there is a little bit of a difference, you have to go best player available no matter what. But if all things are equal, I think the best thing to do is get an edge.
Yeah. I think there's a good discussion on how closely Hunter and Carter is. I really think there's a wide disparate gap between Sanders and those 2 players, I think. I'm a defensive guy. I've always made that claim. I've always said it. The Giants missed out on Micah Parsons when they had him in their sights a few years back. And this is kind of like a chance to hit the redo button here. This guy's the closest to Micah Parsons then. We're going to see.
Yeah.
And I just think he can't pass up. If he's healthy, Spartan, I just can't. I couldn't see myself passing on him if he's fully healthy.
Yeah. I don't think he's not going to be healthy. I would be very surprised if health becomes a concern. So apparently, based on the press conference today, Joe Shane said the Giants team doctors will give the diagnosis and update on Abdul Carter from the medicals. So that'll determine how they view him there. But Shane seemed pretty clear that he feels, and this is the only thing that he can't do. He doesn't seem concerned with the injuries today with Abdul Carter. And he brought up an obvious point. He was still doing the offseason workouts, and he was still doing the combine. He didn't seem affected there.
Right.
So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening there. But because Shane felt confident, I do believe that this is probably going to turn out to not be too much of a concern. And even if it is an injury where he might be out for a few weeks, you really got to consider that, like, hey, he might be out for a few weeks. I guess the worry is probably how does the injury and the surgery related to the injury impact his performance in the long run? That does have to be considered.
Yeah, and I get it. What we got here?
Kevin Meehan brought up a interesting point here. Do you have any issue with going wide receiver at 6 last year and then a wide receiver corner at this year at 3? We're in a division that builds inside and out, yet we're doing the opposite. Do you have an answer for that? Because I have a view on it.
Well, listen, look, I know last year they needed a quarterback, and Shane did try to move up from 6 to
corner, not wide receiver.
I know, but I'm bringing this up because I know he's trying to make a point about the issue going wide receiver at 6 last year. And so he went best player.
Truth. I think his issue is we already got a wide receiver last year.
Right.
If they have Hunter as a wide receiver, why would we get another wide receiver?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
For me personally, if I had to pick, I'm going Carter. I am building my defense where we can be recognized like we were years back, Giants tradition. At this point. And listen, if I thought Sanders was elite, like if put it this way, if this was Daniels this year and we had a chance to get Daniels or Carter, I would go Daniels. I would go at 3.
Sure. It's not edged above all. It's best,
right.
Like, again, all things equal, if you feel like if it's between an equally elite quarterback and an equally elite edge and an equally elite wide receiver, it's really tough to say all those words at once. Then you go quarterback, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's all going to come down to at quarterback. And then Kevin, I'll get back to your question because I want to give you my view. It all comes back to whether or not you feel like you can make Sanders the franchise quarterback and he can consistently be a top 10 quarterback and you can consistently win because of him. It's hard and there's more busts than not, right? So we'll see. We'll see how the Giants end up grading him. I'm sure there's division within the building. Yes. Kevin, for me to answer your question, I actually do agree with you with that concern that if Hunter is truly graded as a wide receiver and they draft a wide receiver again, it'll be very interesting having Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter as wide receivers because both of them will enable the other to do even better because of how many resources you have to dedicate. It would be very tough to defend them. However, if you have offensive line issues and you have quarterback issues still, it doesn't really matter how good these guys are doing. We saw that with Malik Neighbors last year, where he had a great season, but we lost more games in 2024 than we did in 2023, right? So having star wide receivers or 2-star wide receivers, let's be real here because you say that the Eagles are building inside and out and we're trying to build wide receivers. That's not what they should do. No, hold on. The Eagles do have 2 stud wide receivers, but the bread and butter of the team are the trenches. They build that out first. Then they secure 2 wide receivers because I do think having 2 dynamic wide receivers is very beneficial to the team. I don't think you do that till you have the rest of the roster set in terms of the trenches, the defense, the quarterback in place. It's Hunter. Well, like if Hunter was on the team last year with Malik Neighbors, we still would have sucked. You know what I'm saying? And just in terms of having edges, I don't think you can have enough edges, and I'd rather at this point get somebody who can get to the quarterback consistently than get another wide receiver. So I do agree with you, Kevin. It'd be a little bit like, hey, 2 wide receivers. Is that really the move that we want to do 2 years in a row? And I don't think it is. If it's quarterback, that opens it up a little bit for further discussion. But
let's put it this way: they got 8 picks in this draft. In a perfect world, I would love to see them address the trenches, both sides of the ball, and I'm counting edge in the trenches, right? At least 4 of those 8 picks, I would love to see them address the trenches. Any combination of D-line, edge, tackle, guard, any combination, that's what I would love to see. Perfect world for the Giants draft. The perfect draft would be 4 out of the 8 are the trenches.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Now, obviously, you got to go best player available, but I think there's a couple factors at play here. Carter being a third, the third pick option, makes him like clear cut. We already got one trench guy there if the Giants draft him. Then that doesn't actually address the defensive tackle need, and it doesn't pull away from the fact that there's a lot of good defensive tackles. So I think the Giants, in my view, should walk away with not just 1, but 2 more defensive tackles from this year's draft class because it's so loaded, right? As for a lineman, this is offensive line. This is a hot take. I'm not that intrigued on drafting linemen because of need anymore. And the reason being is because the Giants have allocated more assets into draft capital towards the offensive line than virtually any other team in the last 15 years. And the miss rate is very high. I'm at the point, truth, where I'd rather have not only the offensive line starters, but also the depth addressed in free agency. That is one position I would prefer it with as opposed to the draft.
Okay. I mean, all right. That's fine. Your take. I mean, I tend to think they need to get themselves another interior lineman and create more depth, whether he plays, starts, or just gets a lot of snaps his rookie year. You got to realize that Van Rooten, he's going to probably retire after this year. He's 34,
right.
35. And we don't know about JMS yet, if he's the real deal, going to be a fixture there. I really believe they need to get an interior lineman there who can play guard and center. Nothing flashy, a big boy who can just, be a mudslinger inside between the tackles. I really do think they need that.
Yeah.
Now, whether that could be a tackle that converts into a guard at the NFL level, there's a lot of them in this draft that will convert. So,
and that's an interesting point because we talked about that. One of the challenges with the pure interior offensive linemen in this draft class is there's actually not that many of them. Beyond Zabel, I mean, there's really not that many that you can look at beyond pick, the second round. And that's what I'm worried about. But you're right. There's a lot of guys that could actually theoretically be hybrids. They're playing tackle now, but might be able to transition to guard.
Oh, yeah.
So I wouldn't mind it one bit, to be completely honest with you. But the dependency on them, the reliability on mid-round offensive linemen to be consistent starters just doesn't really seem to work out too well for us. And that's why, so you bring up a good point, you move on to next year, GVR's off the team, maybe even JMS is off the team. I'd still rather them go free agency. But again, Shane pointed out today, and I get it, that you kind of have to balance the financials of free agents versus the low-cost options that you have with offensive linemen. Right. But, maybe we could just segue this into the mid-round picks. I mean, let's just talk about day 2 picks because this is where things get spicy with the Giants.
Okay. They got 3 picks, right? 3 picks.
Yes,
34, picks. 65, and 99.
Correct. 34, 65, 99. Now I always say you gotta go best player available, but I end up mocking the needs anyway. I would like to see with those 3 picks the following taken.
Okay.
I would like defensive tackle, obviously. I would like a running back, and I would like a wide receiver. I don't feel like we actually do have a wide receiver 2. I feel like we have 2 wide receiver 3s, and we're just kind of hoping they're wide receiver 2s. However, again, I understand if they go offensive lineman, I get it, but that's how I'd like to see it. Defensive tackle, wide receiver, running back. What about you?
All right, I'm there with 2 out of 3. I have.
I think I know which 2.
Okay, I have defensive lineman, I have running back, and my third one would be offensive lineman because we have 99 and then 105. I think you can get a wide receiver, a pretty good one at 105.
We probably should have brought. I forgot about that. Right, we're picking 6 picks after 99.
Right. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of on the same wavelength, you and I. And listen, the defensive tackles, we keep talking about this. Probably the best depth in this draft. You can actually probably get one at 99, pick 99. They're out there. We had guests last week on the show, and they were talking about a few guys that were definitely can be a plug and play at that spot. So I think on day 2 we are going to see them take a defensive lineman. I don't know where, but I definitely think that's kind of like money in the bank. I think that's a definite.
Yeah, I'm just putting this out there for anybody that's in the chat room. Feel free to enter any questions or topics that you want us to discuss. Yeah, true. And let me just go back to that point then. If we expand it to not just pick 99, but also pick 105.
Right.
I would like to see those 4 positions that I mentioned taken: wide receiver, running back, D tackle, offensive lineman. And then with that next pick, a defensive tackle. Like just get another one. Because I don't think Chauncey Golston is a guaranteed starter at defensive tackle. We had Bobby Skinner on the show the other day. I don't think he believes
he'll be an edge, right? He'll be more on the outside.
Yeah, his alignment will be a little bit more edge related. They might put him in defensive tackle, but again, not that much guarantee to the ball out for us. So the question is, of course, and you brought it up too, will the Giants potentially trade back with any of those picks? I don't know if they would trade up, and maybe we'll get to that too. Will they trade back?
Possible. Get another pick.
I can see it with 34. I could see them do it if they can get 2 more picks in the top 100. Sure, but that's it. I don't really think they're going to get fleeced.
Yeah, I mean Shane did that a couple of years back. Do you remember? The day 2, the second round, he traded back a couple of times,
right?
And to get more picks. So listen, he's done it before, and if you're thinking that's probably where he can still trade back from 34. Now it depends how the board falls, the draft board. Obviously, if there's a guy who we all thought was going to go in the early 20s in this first round, and he's there at 34, I'll throw out a name, Walter Nolan. If he's there, I don't think that the Giants would trade back. I think they'll pick him up in a heartbeat. Or even Derek Harmon, if we're talking about defensive linemen. I think those guys are going to be gone in the first round. But if they're there, then probably not. But if not, I could definitely see him trading back at that pick, a few spots to get a couple extra picks on day 3.
If you want a list of the past or previous pick 34 players, here's some very notable ones.
All right.
Vlad McConkey, Sam Laporta, Elijah Moore, Rock Yassin, Christian Watson, Will Hernandez, who did turn out to be pretty good, just a little beyond us, DeMarcus Lawrence, Patrick Chung, Paul Posluszny, the linebacker for Penn State,
Right.
Chris Snee, great for us, Kyle Vandenbosch, so, and actually Amani Toomer too. I want to throw that out there. Now let's go back to the 90s, and that doesn't maybe translate to now, but I think the benefit, like this kind of shows the benefit of having that pick 34 is that you have like another day to discuss and sleep on it because you have the dealer's choice the next day as to what you want to do.
Right.
So, I don't know if they're going to want to trade back necessarily. If, like you said, one of these day one grade guys falls, they're not going to trade back. They're just going to get him.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, it makes perfect sense. They've done it every year, right? We had McKinney, who was rejected to go round one, big time. I mean, not just late round one, mid round one. He fell, and we picked him right up. You had Ojolari, another one, who did the same thing, rejected to go in the first round, and Lord behold, he was there in round two, and the Giants scooped him right up.
Right. So, all right, here's another one we got to discuss too. Kevin, thanks for bringing it up.
That's a big one, Kevin. This is a big one.
We also got to talk about trading up. So let's just start about like this. Should the Giants draft a quarterback at 34? Truth, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't want them to. If the options are between Moreau or any of the other guys, Sal, whatever it might be, or even Dart, I feel like if you don't have conviction that the quarterback could be good, then you're pretty much drafting for the sake of drafting a backup. And I'm not in on it. Yeah, sure, you might get lucky and they might, they might excel, but they would need development. And if the team's not good next year and you have Jalen Milroe, everybody's going to get fired, new staff, Milroe will be there as a backup. Like, his development's going to be stunted anyway. So I just don't really have interest in them taking a quarterback unless they are convinced that he could be the guy.
Okay, good point. You made a fair point. We don't, we're all talking about Sanders. We don't know, and Shane did mention today in the press conference that he thought a couple other guys were worth the look-see other than Sanders and Ward. He didn't get into detailed on that, but he did mention it. So we don't know how they view these guys like a shuck. I know I saw that funny little clip on him throwing a horrible down and in. I don't know where that was, his workout. But they like him, and a lot of people like him. Phil Simms, one of them. I haven't seen enough of him, so I'm not going to say anything. And of course, we don't know how much they like Dart. I have no idea. They're keeping it quiet. I have no clue. Maybe they love him, and they're keeping it quiet. And maybe they will trade up back in the first round for him. I don't know if they would do that. But like you said, Spartan, if they love him or love a certain guy, maybe they will. Because we have no clue what they rate and view these guys. Because all we know is Ward, Sanders, and then no one knows about anybody else. We don't really talk about it. So we don't know. For all we know, they may love Dart way more than Sanders. I don't know if that's true. I'm just throwing out a scenario. But that's why I'm saying every year in the draft, you're going to see something's going to shock you, whoever it is. And it could be the Giants this year might do a crazy move and get a quarterback because, Mara did want them to get a quarterback this year, right? He was adamant about that. But Shane did say today he's not going to force anything, right?
He's not going to force anything.
Right.
I guess my one concern is, and we talked about with Bobby Skinner, where it's like, look, if you think the quarterback's going to be good, they're going to go in the first round. I think my concern is similar to taking Sanders over Carter if they don't feel like Sanders is going to be the guy.
Right.
In that we missed the opportunity to get the generational quarterback, or I'm sorry, the generational edge. I actually feel like it's a similar situation with pick 34. If you pick a quarterback because you want to take a flyer, first of all, the odds of those working out and being good quarterbacks is extremely low. I think there's a trade-off there as well. You're going to lose the opportunity to draft another solidified player like a Walter Nolan type, right? Or one of the defensive tackles that could be a solidified perennial starter and consistently, make a Pro Bowl year in, year out. So there's a trade-off there too. It's not as sharp, but that is something that I want the Giants to keep in mind. And I feel like when you draft a quarterback in the mid-rounds, or later, it just – I don't know. It's like, well, no one thought he was actually going to be good, but let's see what we can make him. And I don't really like that attitude.
Yeah.
That's just me, though. So, Truth, what about the other option? What about trading up?
Trading up from 34 into the first round?
Yeah, from 34 into the first round to draft a sliding quarterback. I know that's been mentioned. And the only two quarterbacks they're mentioning it for are Sanders and for Dart, because I think Milroe should be there by the end of that, by pick 34. But
I agree with that. But you know what's intriguing, Spartan? He has been invited to day one to attend in Green Bay for the draft. And there's only 32 picks in round one. So that's intriguing to me why they invited him. Milroe, I'm talking about. I cannot see him getting drafted in round one, despite his great athletic ability, which he is the best athletic quarterback in this draft.
100%. I think he's the best athletic quarterback in the last 5 drafts.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah. I didn't even thought about that far, but yeah, that's probably a good argument you got there. But yeah, so we're talking about Dart, let's say. Now, Dart, if you look at the board and you look at teams, would a team like New Orleans, because the issues with Carr, would they take a Dart that early in the draft? Some people say, yeah. I don't know if they would. They may trade back into the draft first round, like we're just talking about the Giants, and that would be somewhere around. I would think. What do you think? Like midway, like 18 to 20s, early 20s.
Yeah, but the thing is, and I want Giants fans to know this: like trading up back into the first will likely cost next year's first if you're trading up that high. If you're going from,
I would never do that. Then I would never do that.
Right. I don't think it's worth it, because at that point, it's like, I guess you start questioning, you're trading up for a quarterback. Like, again, we're back to the same problem. You better believe that quarterback can be the franchise quarterback, can be the guy that you win because of. I want them to have that conviction if they're trading up, not for flyers.
Right. I agree.
But,
and you hope they think the same way, right, Spartan? You don't want our brain trust guys to do something like that and hoping that these guys can be the franchise. They got to know.
Exactly. They can't. You can't afford to lose quality picks on flyers. It's just not going to work. So this is an interesting one. This is from Chris. This is the first time since 1993 that there's not been a first-round trade this late before the draft. That's interesting.
Tells you a lot about the drop-off. Okay. Makes sense. It makes sense. So with that being said, Chris, if you're on there, anybody else, do you think when draft night day one comes, do you guys think we're going to see a handful of trades? More than, let's say, at least 3. Does anybody think that?
I could imagine the Steelers. My biggest theory is that the Steelers will make an attempt to trade up for Dart.
All right, so from 21, they're going to move up.
I think so.
Okay. And they could probably move up until, without giving away a first, maybe up five spots to 15, 16.
They might go 10. They might go 10 spots. I mean, if they feel like they need to secure a franchise quarterback, they'll do it.
Yeah, if you go up 10 spots, then you probably have to give a first-round pick next year, right?
I think the Steelers might be at a crossroad where they might have to consider doing it, because they keep falling into that trap of they're always good enough to miss out on the top 15 picks, but they're never good enough to be good beyond 9-7 or 9-7-1, 10-7.
Yeah, what's the status with Rodgers? Is he going to sign with them, and what's the latest on that?
It's possible. Still nothing solidified.
And do you think it's going to be more than a 1-year deal?
No.
No, you think it's a 1 year and that's
It's
it?
a 1-year deal at best. So the Steelers, I'm really going to think that the Steelers make an attempt to trade up and try to secure a quarterback. I think that just makes the most sense because I can't really think of what other options work for them.
Okay, so let's just create a scenario here. Let's assume the Giants take either Hunter or Carter at 3, and then Pittsburgh, then let's just say pick 11 or something like that, trades up and gets Dart. Now the Giants, I would think if that happened, they would just sit tight at 34.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they're going to make a stab for Dart. And maybe that's it. I mean, look. I could see them picking Dart if he falls. I just don't think Dart's going to fall. It's a very low return that he falls out of the first.
Yeah, and I can guarantee you that somebody who has a first round grade in this draft is going to fall into round 2 early in round 2. It happens every year. And I don't know what position that's going to be. It could be defensive line because it's very deep. It could be another position.
Cooper DeJean was the one last year that was like, damn, I can't believe he fell out of the first.
Who was that?
Cooper DeJean.
Yeah, Cooper. Yeah, that's true. So, we're going to see something like that. I mean, those things happen, especially the Giants with the second pick in round two. They'll have, they're going to get a good player. They're going to get a good player, man. They really will.
I mean, look, it's 7 spots back from where they got Deontay Banks a couple years ago, right? So this is a premium pick.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about day 2. We couldn't for a little bit talk about day 3, but how do you think the Giants should just approach day 3 in general? I'll give you my view of how they should do it. I think this is where you start going for the dudes that, may have been injured their senior year, dudes that, maybe had for whatever reason, didn't ball out because they didn't have a good offense or a good quarterback, and they're a talented wide receiver with good measurables. Anybody remaining who had a good senior day, just anybody. I think they got to look for upside that they really think they can work on with the player. Not a guy that's probably reached their ceiling.
No, like I said, there are a lot of guys, especially defensive line on day 3. You can get them. You get the kid JJ Pagron from Ole Miss. The guys had a great senior week. The other kid, other lineman who had a good senior week, who's projected to be, what's the kid's name? Jeez, he's from Miami. Rivers, is that his name? Jalen Rivers. He had a good week. So there are guys that you can get on day 3 that are pretty good players that are going to play enough snaps to contribute as rookies. Spartan, go to second from the bottom. There's someone through a scenario, Kevin Mahan.
Me?
So this is quite possible. This could happen. So let's assume that Ward's gone, Sanders is gone, Pittsburgh traded up and took Dart. So let's assume this could be either Shuck or Milrow. Would Shane trade up with either, he can trade with Philly, that's for sure, at 32, but maybe with Kansas City at 31, get ahead if he really wants to get a quarterback. Let's say the Giants love Milrow. Let's assume. Would he do that?
Yeah, I mean, I could see them doing it. That wouldn't be very costly. That would be fourth round pick. They can get away with that.
I mean, you're looking to do that, knowing the fact the kid's not going to play probably this whole year, and you could be passing on a pretty good player at 34, who's at another position. Obviously, it's tough. It's not an easy. That's why when you talk about forcing forcing a draft, I think something like that might be a force with Milroe when you got a guy who you could plug and play. That's a tough one, right? Think about it. I don't know if I do it. That's a tough call.
Yeah, again, like don't do it if you. I mean, let's talk about a team that did do it. The Baltimore Ravens did it. Sure. Do it if you feel like you can work with the quarterback and enable them to succeed. Otherwise, don't bother. Like, do not bother if you're feeling iffy about their abilities.
Yeah.
And I wonder, the best scouts, the teams that have done it, the teams that have gotten a second-round quarterback and it worked out, Philadelphia and Baltimore, two of the best front offices in the league. What did they see in those two players that made them think, they could still be great quarterbacks even though everybody passed on them?
Yeah.
I wonder that. I wonder that a lot.
Absolutely. And let's not kid ourselves, guys. When Lamar Jackson was coming out of college, he was nowhere near the passing quarterback he is right now. It wasn't
exactly. It had to be worked on.
It's not even close. He was probably if not below Milroe, because Milroe could throw a good deep ball. But Lamar Jackson transformed himself as a passer, I think, well beyond what even what the Ravens thought. The way he throws a football now, the decisions he makes in the pocket, it's amazing. And he still has that threat of running the football. He's unique. He really is.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. So if they feel like Milroe can be the Lamar Jackson in terms of a guy that you can improve, then go for it. I don't mind it. But if you feel like it's something that can't be worked on, then you can't do it.
Yeah, and Chris on the bottom one makes a good point. We just talked about that. If you got a guy, because they're going to be some good players at 34 when we get to that pick. You see it, Chris, the last one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're going to get a good player who you could plug and play, no doubt, at 34. But probably basically what you get is a first-round talent right there at 34.
Right.
You really are. And I got to tell you, like I said, if Walter Nolan's sitting there at 34, I'm not taking Milroe. I'm taking Walter Nolan.
Yeah. Again, unless they think it's Lamar Jackson, then you got to go with Walter Nolan. Like, this isn't backup quarterback land.
Right. And some guys on him may disagree with me, but I think Walter Nolan's a no-brainer. I think he's going to be a good player. He's going to be an instant. I don't want to say star, but I think he's going to be close to it. And he'll have his share of Pro Bowls. The guy can play. The guy.
Right. Can play. Everybody, feel free to throw anything else out there if you want us to talk about anything. Otherwise, I'll just bring up the last point and just to summarize it all. Giants draft. I hope the process just goes like this, because I don't know how they feel about Sanders just yet. If they love Sanders and they think he can be the franchise, go ahead and get him. I trust the Giants. I have my view of Sanders. I do like him, but I'm going to defer to the Giants because I actually think they're pretty good at evaluating quarterbacks. Not Jones. They messed that up. That's different though. But draft prospects, they didn't like Caleb Williams last year. They did like Jaden Daniels. Would have gotten him if they could, right?
Yep.
Obviously, that wasn't an option. So go ahead. If you think you can work with him, get him. If not, you're not convinced, you have to go with best player available. Truth, you and I both agree, if it's equal between Hunter and equal between Carter, and they're both available, Carter. Odds are it's going to be Hunter before Carter. If Carter goes first, then get Hunter. I think that's an appropriate move to make. And then pick 34. If any of the quarterbacks are available that they like and they think can be a Lamar Jackson type, go for it. But if not, get one of the beast defensive tackles or the best player available of those positions that we called out in need. And then mix the rest of the draft in with some of the areas for opportunity for the Giants that has talent available. Running backs, linemen. I think there's some positions that aren't really going to make sense early. I'm going to throw one more position that I'd actually like to see the Giants draft, Truth. Can you guess it?
Tight end.
I want them to draft a kicker.
Draft a kicker.
I want them to draft a kicker at the end of the draft.
You want the kid out of Florida State?
What's that?
You want the kid out of Florida State?
Yes, I want him. Get
You
him.
think he's going before the 7th round?
I do not think so.
Okay.
Best kicker available in round 7. That's what you do.
Okay.
Because we need a kicker too. We haven't thought about that in a while.
Yeah. I think that's a move that they're gonna probably make with Cano. What's he got? A $4 million cap space if they release him. And there's other guys they're gonna probably release too. They're just waiting, so they can get the most value out of it. But
Right, exactly. The post June 1st cuts.
right. So let's touch on this. We didn't mention this. What if scenario? What if Sanders doesn't get taken by either Giants or Cleveland? How far back do you think he'll go? Do you think the Saints will pick him up? Would the Jets do it at 7?
No, I don't think the Jets will do it at 7. I think it's going to go Saints, and if not the Saints, Steelers. Like, Steelers is the last line of defense for where that guy goes.
Okay, so if that happened, then that leaves Dart still on the board. Could the Rams at 26 take Dart?
They could definitely pick them.
Okay, knowing that he can learn from
100%.
Stafford, and don't rush him, and that's a great teacher to learn from, I would think, right?
I agree.
So it's gonna be interesting, this draft, guys. I mean, I can't wait. I mean, day one is going to be interesting to see from 20 to 30. I want to see which projected first rounders fall into round 2, because there's going to be a few of them.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see. So, Spartan, do you think the Giants get a quarterback in this draft?
I think so. I'm literally going to put it at 50-50.
Okay. I'm kind of right there with you. I think 50-50 is probably what we're going to see. The Giants. This roster still needs more talent, and like Shane said today, he's not going to force things. If he gets high quality talent, especially in early picks, first couple of days, he has to make that move and get him.
I agree.
I think ownership, Mara would understand if he's seeing these studs, being selected by the Giants who could be plug and play players. I think he'll understand. And I do think the Giants will win more than 3 games next year. So
I think so. But I will say this. I will say this. I am going to be disappointed yet again. We still don't have a young franchise quarterback to work around for the future. That is still a problem with the Giants. We have a stopgap with Russell Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have the franchise quarterback, and that has to be addressed. So I will say this. If the Giants have a losing season and they drafted Carter and they don't have a young quarterback, and everybody gets fired, which actually I'm actually okay with, because the restart wouldn't be as bad as if they draft a quarterback this year. He sucks. We suck. And next year we're forcing a rookie quarterback on the next administration. Yeah. You draft Carter, it's actually a pretty clean-cut firing and actually a very attractive job, because then the Giants are closer to just being, in an opportunity to get a franchise quarterback in 2026.
Yeah.
If the Giants go 9-7 or 10-7 this year with Russell Wilson and everything's looking solidified, then what I'm going to say is this. Next year they have to trade up to get a franchise quarterback. Like, wherever they are sitting, they have to trade up to get a quarterback that's legit. They have to do it eventually. They can't suffocate like the Steelers have in no man's land at pick 20 and keep passing on quarterback because they're just not there. Trade up. They have to trade up next year if that's the scenario.
Okay. All right. So look, we're only a little over a week away for the draft, and Spartan said next week we're going to have the whole crew on.
That's it.
And we're going to have some interaction with you guys on here on the show, and we're going to give some scenarios and keep talking about the draft, talk about the players, and see what we think is going to happen.
Yes.
I think it's going to be a pretty interesting draft. I think a lot of Giants fans are going to be on the edge of their seats, man, especially on
There's
day
going to be a
one.
lot of debate, right? I mean, no matter what we do.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. If I had to put money on it, they're not taking a quarterback in round one. If I had put money on it, so, but I could be wrong. I'm just going with a gut feeling.
I think it would just be obvious by now, and I'm not feeling it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Giants fans, thank you all for tuning in. It's great interacting with you throughout this whole stretch. We'll see you guys next week. Truth, have a good one, brother.
Yep. See you next week. See you guys.
Cheers.